Alright everybody, today I'm going to be working on my 2012 Mazda Speed 3. It's got suspension noise in the front end and then some rattling noise in the rear. I've gone through this car, replaced the front struts, rear shocks, springs, did the brake pads, rotors. Can't figure out what's rattling. The only thing I could find on the car that makes any noise going over bumps was the rack and pinion. So today I'm going to replace the rack and pinion. We're going to start by lifting the car up on all 4 points, getting it off the ground real high, and then start working on taking the front wheels off and then taking the front suspension off to get ready to lower the front subframe. So let's get to work. So previously, not recorded, I had all 4 wheels off a few weeks ago to try to discover what the heck was rattling around. Usually when you have the wheels bolted on, I just remove the one lock lug nut, but you grab the wheel and you could see if there's any play in the lower ball joints, in the bushings, in the sway bar link, and nothing. No noise whatsoever. So, let's see if I can get this in here. So yeah, you can see I put new struts and new springs in here. But I'm gonna take the wheels off and I'm gonna show you what I'm talking about for the noise. So neither side moves at all. There's no noise in the suspension, nothing. So I'm gonna take the wheel off and I'm gonna show you the noise that I'm hearing. Just from grabbing everything, checking all the bushings, checking all the links, checking tie rods, everything. And the only thing I can come down to was the rack and pinion itself making the noise. I checked the bushings on the rack and pinion, and those were good. So I'm going to go ahead and take this wheel off, both sides actually, take both wheels off, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I went ahead and removed both sides, both tires off both sides, went underneath and re-inspected the bushings, and what I'm discovering, what I was saying with the tie rods, is a bunch of grease coming out of this boot here. The axle is good. There's no grease on anywhere in here. But here's the noise I'm hearing. You can hear it. Ready? Over bumps, you're hearing that. On this side. And same thing here. Real bad. So I bought the whole new rack and pinion. I'm going to replace both tie rod ends. The inner tie rods come with the rack and pinion. So I'm going to go ahead and start dismantling. So what I'm going to do first is unbolt the center axle, or excuse me, the center bolt for the axles, unbolt the tie rods, unbolt the spindle bolt for the strut, remove the calipers from the brackets and just hang them and zip tie them up to the coil springs up here. And the sway bar end link, I can remove it from the bottom here. And same thing on the other side. So we're going to do a tie rod, sway bar end links, lower spindle bolt for the strut. The axle itself can stay in the transmission, but we're going to pop it out of the hub, and we're going to pull the caliper off and just zip tie it up to the coil spring to get it out of the way, and I'll be able to move the axle out of there. Once I get the tie rod off and everything else off, the axle will be free, and we'll go from there. All right, so we got the axles off, the struts off, sway bar links, tie rods off. I'm going to replace the entire, sway bar bushings and the outer tie rods like I mentioned earlier. I'm looking at the ball joint. Since I have it apart, I could just go ahead and replace this because it seems a little loose. So I might just replace those ball joints. I might end up just replacing the whole control arm, even though the bushings look good. But yeah, this is pretty bad. But let me show you on the other side what's even worse, because here you can see the sway bar. Let's see if you can see this. See that? It's not supposed to do this. So we're going to replace the bushings on that sway bar also. What I got, Lamar's underneath right now, taking the cross member bolts off. And once we get these cross member bolts off, it'll be 14s on the outside and 12s to the brackets. We'll get all those off, then we'll start attacking these big guys right here, which I think are 19s or 21s. There's 4 of those. So we're going to get going on that. All right, so we got, let me see if I can get this camera light on, but I guess not. So Up in here is the steering rod. You take off this shield off first and exposes that 12mm bolt right there. So that's what I'm going to get off right now. All right, so we got the subframe out. It was getting hung up on the rubber bushings that hold the exhaust, the downpipe where the resonator is. So we just took the rubber bushings off, that cleared that. We got the 17 bolts up front, 21 mils in the back, and we got that out. We removed the heat shield, this heat shield right here, that goes over the top of the rack and pinion to get to the 3 mounting bolts. And also, as we were lowering it down, we removed the 17 mil high pressure line, and then the return line that has just the squeeze clamp, hose clamp on there. We're able to get that off. And then this shows where the steering rod from the steering column comes into. So that's it, she's off. We can move the sway bar out of the way and basically get the rack out. Like that. There's a new one. I'm just going to pull this one off. Careful with the car right here. I'm just going to pull this one off and then grab the new one. 1, 2, 3. It's off. Put this outside real quick. Alright, we're going to clean the frame up real quick. I also have to get the little dust shield off the other rack and pinion. And I almost forgot, but the old rack and pinion gets shipped back for a $40 core charge. So I got to make sure I grab that. Alright, so I got the new rack and pinion on the frame. I got the bushings in for the sway bar, but in order to replace the bushings on the sway bar, I have to pull the control arms off. I got all new control arms coming in, new ball joints. Should be in today, so let's see where we get with that. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take apart the front end. So I'm going to take off this spindle. I'm going to take apart the control arm, take the sway bar off, and I also have to get the old rack and pinion and do the measurements on the left side and the right side to when the new tie rods come in. Hopefully today we can put it back exactly where they were. So I'm going to work on that, take the measurement of the threads here. This is the driver's side, left side. So I'll take a measure of the threads to the bolt and do the same thing on the opposite side. Then I'm going to pack this old rack and pinion away to get it ready for the core charge. So let's go with that. Okay, so I got the sway bar off. I ended up taking the new rack and pinion off because it's easier to maneuver the subframe without all the components on it. So I was able to get the rear 2 bolts on the lower control arms off. Now I'm working on taking the front lower control arm bolts off. I already removed the spindles. Both spindles are off. The other one's sitting right there. I used my little separator tool that's on there, this thing. Just loosened it right up and just popped off. So I'm actually really glad that I'm replacing this entire control arm. The bushings look okay, but the ball joints are a pain in the ass. So rather than pressing new ball joints into these control arms, I'm just replacing the entire control arm, and I'm hoping that those show up here shortly. I'm going to continue on cracking these 2 19mm bolts in the front, one here and one where the breaker bar is on right now. The back 2 bolts come up from underneath and come up and wrap around the sway bar. And those are 17 mils. I also got these new bushings. These are the old ones, but I'm going to replace both these sway bar bushings also. And yeah, let's get back to work. Alright, so we got the subframe back up underneath. We mounted the control arms. See the new ball joint. We got the sway bar in. We left it loose so that we can adjust it to put the sway bar end links in. So we're going to put the sway bar end links in after we get the axle in and everything else and the tie rods. But right now the frame's mounted up on both sides. We're just going to finish tightening up the cross member bracket here, get everything tightened up, and then we're going to start putting the spindles back on. Alright, so I got this hub back on. Just got to tighten up the spindle bolt onto the actual strut. And right now what we're working on, let's see if I can get in here, is we're working on that right there, putting the high pressure line back on the rack and pinion, and then the low pressure return line. So I had to buy a new fitting for the low pressure return line because the core already got sent out and I forgot to take this piece off. So I did order an OEM one offline. I bought this one at O'Reilly's locally, so I'm going to see if this one works. And if it doesn't, I'll just put it on the shelf. Alright, so I moved the car up on the lift. after I took it for a quick ride after putting everything together, and it was still making some noise up front. So you could see here we replaced the rack and pinion, the tie rods, the ball joint, bolt and ball joint. The struts are new, sway bar is new, the sway bar end links are new. These sway bar bushing is new. You can see the blue polyurethane in there. You can see it better right here on this side. The new rack and pinion, new, you can see the inner and outer tie rods. This is which side had the new control arm? I forget which one it was. I think it might have been this one. But, so yeah, new strut, sway bar links on this side, all new. I also replaced, I junked the old rack and pinion. I forgot to replace this fitting right here. You can see the new fitting of the low pressure return. So I replaced that with one from AutoZone, but it was the wrong one. It was this one, a brass one, and that was not the right one. So I ordered the correct OEM one, put a new clamp on it. So that's all set. But I'm still trying to figure out what the banging is, and come to find out, it's the connection from the passenger side axle CV joint to the jack axle here that goes right into the transmission. So this joint right here, listen, that's when I'm going over bumps, that's what I'm hearing. So I'm gonna take this, get the car off the lift, because I can't do it on a drive-on lift. I don't have the the center lift here to lift up the suspension. So I'm gonna put the car back on the ground and work on taking the strut off, sway bar link off, the tie rod off, the caliper off, so I can pull this axle out and replace it. I happen to have a spare one right here. I have a spare one and no noise on this side, but what I'd like to check out is once I get it off to see if it's actually this one, because it's making noise in the transmission, but not as bad, but most of the noise is here. So I can't tell if there's a bushing here, but I've had this jack axle here as a spare. I'm gonna see if I have any in my parts pile. I only could find those, and yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and take this axle off and see if this makes a difference, because this doesn't have any cuts in the boot, so I'm not sure why it's making all this kind of noise, but it's obviously not sounding good here. So I'm gonna pull this out and check it out. All right, so I took it for a test drive after putting everything back together again, and I'm still getting a clanking noise on the driver's side. I've shook the wheel after it was bolted back on, and I'm not getting any movement in the wheel or any clanking noise in the wheel at all. So I'm trying to figure out what is banging around. It's not the axle. This whole control arm on this side was replaced. I ended up ordering new control arms again, but the ones I had bought previously were from AutoZone, to replace this full control arm and this ball joint here. I think what I'm going to do is I replaced this ball joint here, but I don't see any evidence of anything loose because I've tightened every single bolt more than once. My only other option right now, or probably not my only other option, my next option is to check the motor mounts to see if the engine is moving around. So I'm going to lift the motor up slowly and see if I get any movement in the engine before the whole car goes up. So I'm going to lift the engine slowly from the transmission side and see if I'm getting any movement. So if the engine goes up slightly before the car does, then that will tell me that there's a motor mount bad, and it might be this one that's up here, this motor mount back here, which is the transmission side. It's mounted right there. It's under the battery. So I can take that all off and look at it, see if that bushing is completely gone, or this rear motor mount here that's on the back of the transmission. I'll check that, but nothing on the actual wheel, the caliper, the strut mount, everything is solid and there's no evidence of bouncing up and down. I cannot for the life of me figure out what it is. And I've already replaced the, I replaced the strut here. It's got all new bolts. You can see the new parts on the sway bar end link. Yeah, I can't figure out what this is at all. I can recheck this subframe mount. This grease is all over the place here from the old drive shaft that was replaced previously. It just needs to be wiped down, but yeah, I'm just gonna keep checking. So the motor mounts on the transmission side, like the rear training mount, which is right there, these mounts have rubber. So I just lifted from the back and I saw maybe a half an inch to an inch of movement, but I gotta remember that these things do have rubber in them for a little bit of play. They're not solid motor mounts. And then this one up here, you can see the bolts for the motor mount on the transmission here, the transmission mount on the driver's side. So I lifted this one up. I'm gonna see if I can record it coming down slowly and compare how much it goes down. Okay, let's take a look at that. All right, so I've removed the battery box and ECU, which are right there. And I've also removed the mass airflow sensor and the air filter, so it's right there. So now I want to check these bolts down here. So I might have to pop the shift cables out to get to those. But what I might do is just actually support the motor from underneath with a jack, take this motor mount completely out and inspect it. That's probably what I'm going to do, but when I lifted it a second ago off camera, I want you to see what I saw about my suspicions of the motor mount. I haven't tried tightening anything down yet because it might not be that simple, but it definitely moved. I'll show you here. Okay, let's see if I can see. See? So it's definitely coming up. Let's see if I can also let's see if I can keep this somehow. And I'll try to see if I can see those bolts going up. All right. I don't see any movement on the actual mount, the aluminum bolt, the aluminum mount mounted to the actual transmission here. I didn't see any movement there. The only movement I really saw was right in here. It's kind of hard to tell on camera. I'll try to see if I can get a better angle as I lower it down. So let's see. Okay. I'm gonna lower it down now to see if you guys can see it. See, that's a good movement right there. So I'm gonna go ahead and support the motor back up, take this whole motor mount off to inspect it. All right, so I've go ahead and I lubed the bolts with PB Blast, removed the 4 bolts, and now I'm gonna pull the motor mount to inspect it. Let's see if I can get it out without too much problems here. I don't want to lose the element of the engine. There it goes. Moved a little bit, but that's okay. I'm gonna try to see if I can get to those bolts and pull this up. See if I can tighten those bolts up also. Just this mount on here, make sure those are good. But let's take a look at this mount. So it doesn't look bad. Definitely has some stress in it. You can see here, but it wasn't bad. Like completely blown out. All right, we got everything back together. I decided to keep the battery tray cover off and the ECU cover off because it was rattling a little bit. Tightened everything back up, tightened the motor mount back up underneath the battery tray, and I went and checked the this bolt here for the center strut. This is one of the new struts, and it was basically hand loose. So I'm thinking that was the major cause of all of the issues, on top of a bad ball joint that I had and whatnot. But I'm gonna go test it out, but I think that was it. It was OEM parts that we bought brand new, but this bolt was loose right here. I tightened the passenger one also, but it wasn't loose. But this one definitely was. Thanks for watching.